privilege of introducing your student. Ruchi ma'am. Ma'am's connection dropped. Let her come. I think your connection dropped.
Yes, Ruchika, start.
Yes, so I was saying that I just take the privilege of introducing your student. So, good evening, everybody, my dear faculty colleagues, and my very dear students, and our most dearest alumni, Miss Palak Mehta. Palak, it's my proud privilege to introduce you to our junior batches. Palak is a BBA pass out from Amity University 2003-6 batch. As you would have heard the chit chat between her, they were trying to reminisce the old times. It's been 15 years. So we thought it would be very good if she could come back here and discuss her life story in the last 15 years. As we have seen, Palak dons many a hats. She started India's leading vegan publication and solutions-based Vegan First in 2016. She represents the Indian chapter of World Vegan Organization. She is the founder and CEO of a company called as Vegan First, and she is also a host to the Palak Mehta Show. So Palak, it would be our pleasure to invite you on this virtual format and make like the platform is all open to you. We would request you to discuss about your life, about your journey and your life at ASB and everything. You're welcome, Palak.
Thank you so much. Firstly, I just really want to wholeheartedly thank Ruchi ma'am and Ruchika ma'am, you for taking this initiative and joining, inviting me. I'm truly honored because I think during our times we did not have so much of access of digital, and we couldn't just easily open our mobiles, in class and meet students. So this is amazing, and this is also a great platform for me to reflect because you also get to know how far you have come when you look back and see where you had started from. I was very shy, I was very timid, I was very scared of Ruchi ma'am sometimes, but I think now with a lot of respect and gratitude I can always talk to her. So I feel that this is also very good, not just for students but also people who are invited. So thank you so much for having me. Now, students, thank you so much for being here today. I want to keep it very informal. I have not prepared a lot. I have some basic slides with me. And the reason was that, hey, I can give a very formal presentation on what we have achieved and everything, but let's just have a heart to heart. And you can open up, ask as many questions as you like. The whole aim here is not to feel the pressure to see what we can do in the future, but to truly see why are we doing this in the first place, right? Why are we here at ABS? Amity University is something which is very dear to my heart. I'll tell you a little background about myself. I was a commerce student and not had many goals in life. This is talking about in 2003. Amity seemed like a decent option, so I took it. I genuinely a decent option, but I was not very aggressively applying for colleges. I was never a go-getter and never very ambitious. And also, when we go through my whole talk, you'll understand why. But it was when I entered Amity in 2003 that I was exposed to a myriad formats of teaching and education, which resonated with me very deeply. This is something which I felt was missing at the school level, and even missing at sometimes regular college levels, right? So that is something which Amity gifted to me, which is precious, and it will be precious lifelong. After that, after my first graduation in BBA, I did my majors in marketing, and Ruchi ma'am was, teaching me directly, and I'm so honored that she's here with us today, and also the fact that she's still here with you all in Amity. So we're looking at a huge asset. That is amazing. And back then we were just the first few initial batches, and after that I went on to do 3 years of 1 year of painting, and then 4 years of sculpture in College of Art. So it's a crazy journey. You might just think this is so weird and this is so random. Why would somebody do this? But as Steve Jobs says, when you look back at the dots, they all connect, and I'll tell you exactly how and why. So the 3 years of my college, like I said, it was not very aimed. It was random. I had picked out Amity because it felt like a good option. But in hindsight, I'm just so glad that I did it, and I would not change it for the world, because this is exactly what I needed. The format in which Amity teaches, even today, it is more practical. It prepares you for the real world, and that is when I really started opening up at the school level. Now, like I said, I was a student whom teachers said is a bright student, but is not really a go-getter. And that's what I realized, is perhaps that I don't know my why. I don't know really why to aspire to do something. Uh, when um, when we're all growing up, and this is the question that I get asked a lot as well, is that, hey, what do I do when I'm in my 10th grade? What subject should I choose? When I'm in my college, what should I study? Or what job should I take? These are the questions which come to us on a very regular basis. But I'm going to share a slide with you and just show what the whole career trajectory has been. Well, when I started out doing BBA, one thing was that I started getting to know myself better. And that was the first step for me in education. So education is not just taking outside knowledge and digesting it. It is truly something which, are you able to digest it, inculcate it, make it your own, and then resonate with something and pass it down, to whatever field you choose. So one of the first fundamentals which I think Amity drilled down to me was finding yourself, which sort of defines the whole format for your life. Why finding yourself is so important. How did they do this? Is by exposing us to various situations, exposing us to various activities. Some might not even feel very educational in nature at the outset. I'll give you an example. We were asked to one day just make posters and go out in the canteen and actually go sell a product. Now, usually at school level, or when you enter college, you're not expected to do something which is very practical in nature. You're not expected to just go out there and actually start selling, because we are taught heavy books and we want to make plans. But here is where I feel that this is where I started realizing that I am better at execution than at planning. I would get a 10 on 10 on designing a poster, or putting a thought and idea together. But I'd be very poor at maybe mugging up books, or like an extempore, which I never did at school because it was never made compulsory. It was always termed as extracurricular. But what I did at ABS was that it was just a part of it was just a part of a subject. We had no option. And that was amazing, because all the latent talents which anybody has came out. I famously remember there was this, Ruchi ma'am actually did a case study in our class where uh, we had to actually inculcate, we had to show a scene from a law court. So we had two teams. She made two teams. The case study was depicted in a form of a role play, and that's when we had to present ourselves and we had to share why we stand up for a particular case, and the other body does not. And it might seem like to somebody that, hey, these kids are just joking around, fighting with each other. But I'll tell you what I realized from something as simple as an activity like that is, when you know how you're right, how to portray yourself out to the world in an objective, presentable way. These are life skills that I don't think a book can teach you. These can only happen through experiences. So my first introduction to Amity itself was just experiencing everything that I'm being taught. And that is something which I hold very close to my heart. So those few years were truly life changing, because today I realize the value of them. At that time it was all fun and play, and we were just going from one semester to another, and we had a time of our life. But when I look back, I remember the first time. Now today people invite me for public speaking. I have to tell you, I have never ever spoken on the stage in school. The first time I spoke was in Amity, and that was a 1 minute on the spot speech, and everybody applauded. My classmates told me, you should do this for a living. My teachers told me that. I didn't realize. So the kind of confidence that gave me, so I think that college and your 20s is the most beautiful time for self discovery. So my tips and suggestions to anybody in their 20s is, don't stress out so much about what you want to do, what you want to be. First, invest in yourself, find out who you are. That is a lifelong thing. Anyway, if anybody has questions, please, feel free to type them out. And this is an interactive session. It's not a one-way street anyway. But after Amity, in my second year itself, I realized that, I really need to pursue arts as well. Because by birth, I've been drawing and painting. I was, always winning national level art competitions, but I just never took it seriously. And as I think, college was happening, I realized that I love what I do here at, I love what I'm learning, with marketing, but I feel unsatisfied. I want to also pursue arts. And it was not that should I pursue Amity, quit it midway and do arts. I really wanted to do both, and they honestly have no relation to each other. What has marketing got to do with painting and sculpture, right? But I knew in my heart that this will give me the confidence to move forward in life, so I need to do this. I think that is one thing which, when you have your internal compass, very clear, when you are at a point in time when you can go back. I remember my cousin, telling me the first thing I told her that I'm going to pursue painting for some time. She said, doesn't make sense to me. My reply to her was, it doesn't have to make sense to you. It only has to make sense to me. So don't worry about this. I know what I'm doing. I can't show it to you right now because I haven't figured it out, but I know it's the right thing to do. And it was I think we often, there is so much noise around, especially in today's age, digital age, that we forget listening to our own selves, right? And if we don't do that, then we don't have the conviction or the clarity, to know why we are doing something. So again, it comes down to the same thing. Find yourself, find out who you are first. Be true to yourself first. So, well, I started doing arts. And in arts, I realized that everybody else who was in my, now I was really blessed to get through College of Arts. There are only 15 seats all over India. It was in sculpture. It's a dream college. And and it was another graduation. I was questioned a lot. How stupid are you to do one graduation and after that another? Are you sure you want to do this? Everybody would be getting settled down by then. People would be getting married, or maybe people would be having first time jobs or doing the MBAs. Are you sure you want to waste so much time? But I knew that is, for me, that's the right thing to do. So in my second year, I realized that my ability to express the form of art was way more, in terms of an idea and a concept, was because of my background in BBA, right? And the applications even for art forms. So again, very lucky to meet some of the best artists in the world, such as Anish Kapoor. It is very difficult to meet them in person, where they're showing you privately everything. So I think one was that no learning ever goes waste. If you don't know what you're doing today, there is always something it is adding to your subconscious, at a subconscious level, which we're really not aware of. And the second thing is that after doing arts, I went on taking projects. By the time I was in my fourth year in College of Art, we're passing out, I already started applying what I had learned, right? So I was a production designer of a short film. It also won California's best film festival award. And I was doing graffitis, I was doing projects. So already applying, but I sort of knew that my field is more in a creative direction. And then I went on to doing then I wanted to teach students. Actually, teaching happened to me. One student literally stalked me and forced me to teach her because she was a special child, and it just I just couldn't say no to her after a while. So but then I started realizing I really enjoy teaching students, so I started teaching for a while fine arts. And then I shifted my base from Delhi to Pune, started living on my own, wanted to be independent, etc. Here is the time where I got a full-time job, teaching board students for fine arts. And this is the time when I found out what is veganism. So, the journey which I've encountered all throughout is more of self-discovery than, finding a career goal and going after it. Because it's, I think that, we all are here for every individual, on earth is put for a special purpose, right? And I believe in karma. I feel that we all also come with our own unique talents and desires and gifts, right? So how do we let any, and that is also the seed of innovation, right? So how can we let anything outside truly make a plan, for or for our life? So you can only show paths, show ways, show inspiration, but it is truly very tough for anybody else to tell you what what gift you have and to give to the world. So anyway, now I went on to do to teach at in a school. And soon after I went vegan. And before I do, I just want to ask if anybody has any questions, because now I'll get into the definition of what veganism was, how it changed me, etc.
Come on, students, if you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask. You can unmute or you can drop it in the chat section. Anybody? No. I think
Yeah,
Palak.
because this is very personal right now. I'll talk more. And
Yes, so maybe they'll come out with some questions at a later stage.
yeah, exactly. So what happened was that when I started to find out new things, and I was just in my 20s. 20s is very vulnerable because you don't know what to do. Everybody wants to do something, make the best use of their life, and there are too many people telling you too many things. Or maybe sometimes you don't get direction. There are people around you who trust you a lot and say, hey, you'll figure it out, but you're still lost. It could be either ways, right? But that's the time when I realized that the food that I'm eating, is something which does not really belong to me. It was the first time that I've been raised as a non-vegetarian. I come from a Punjabi background, so I've eaten a lot of things that just walk, be it crabs or prawns or you name it, I've eaten it. And if we don't eat butter chicken every day, it means that we're not eating food properly. So that was the mindset that I come from.
And sorry
But
to interrupt if I'm interrupting in between. I have received first question and that's the same. One of my student is asking, Nikita, she is asking, she want to know how did you get into veganism?
Absolutely. So, Nikita, this is exactly what I'm sharing my story of, going vegan. Nikita, when I was in grade 10th, I was on a school trip with my friend, whose also name incidentally was Palak, and she told me that she's ordering veg momos. Now, as a Punjabi, my typical reaction was that "अच्छे से खा क्या कर रही है?" Like, why aren't you ordering chicken? What's wrong with you? And she said, no, I've quit chicken for a while. So that in grade 10th, I realized that I have a choice to eat what I want to eat. Before that, as a child, I didn't even realize that I could decide, what I want to eat. I was just given food and I had to put it in my mouth. Even though as a child, I used to leave out the chicken pieces and never liked it. But because I was given, I had to eat it. So that was first the first eye-opening thing. Now I went back to my family and I said, look, I'm not going to eat non-veg anymore. I don't feel like it. And they said, where will you get your protein from? You better eat it, you're young. You know don't have any tantrums like that. So I went back to eating non-veg for a while. And then immediately when I was in college, I think right around when BBA got over, right? So that's when, I was exposed to many things. And then I just felt that it's not right. I just again got this nudge. And this time, I actually quit non-veg. And a couple of years later, now I have a spiritual, guru, or I would say just, one of famous personalities globally who is spiritually very, evolved. Well, Mohanji, and he talks a lot about, veganism. But what Mohanji did was he didn't talk a lot. He just shared videos with everybody, and it's just that that was the first time I made a connection to my food. I realized these are living beings, these are not food. So once you put a face to your food, I can tell you guys, there is no going back from it. Because today, if somebody sees a chicken, I see a dead body. Sorry if this sounds extreme to someone, but how do you unsee something that you have already seen? How do you unsee that? You can't, because now your brain, your wiring, everything is changed. So that's what happened to me. I saw videos of chicken getting cut, and I saw that they're crying, they have feelings. So that's the first time I realized that, hey, even animals are sentient beings who have feelings, firstly. And that's when I was exposed to the fact that I thought veganism is a health thing. I always used to think that it's better to be vegan because it's not healthy to consume milk, because human body cannot digest cow's milk. The amount of protein, the amount of vitamins, etc., that a cow produces is very difficult for human bodies to digest it. It's meant for a calf's body. But then I realized that um, sooner or later, but that a cow first is forcefully impregnated. A cow is impregnated to give milk. And whom will the cow give milk to? The baby, right? So at that time, the babies are actually taken away from the mother, and the milk that comes is literally taken by humans for human consumption. So the calf doesn't get anything, and the cow is carrying the calf for 9 months. And then the first thing the mother wants to do is touch her child when the child is born. So that's when I realized that, one is that milk is very unethical because we're stealing somebody's milk, and we are the only species on this whole planet who is consuming the milk of another species. Like a camel does not go and drink a milk of a cow or something like that. But humans, even after the time, even after 9 months and first 1 or 2 years that people drink milk, after that they continue to drinking milk. So that was the first time I realized that animals are here with us, sharing the planet, but they're not commodities. What happens is that the way we are introduced to the flora and fauna and animals around us is that, hey, A for apple, B for ball, S for sheep, sheep gives you wool. So from early on, from childhood, by birth, it's drilled into our heads that, look, this is an animal and it will give you something. We never think that this is an animal and it's existing, it's experiencing their own beautiful life. So when that revolution happened, my world turned upside down. Honestly, I was very depressed for a few months in the beginning, because I was in a state of shock as to what's going around, what are we eating, what kind of clothes am I wearing. I started to realize that my lipstick, if I'm wearing a red lipstick, it's made of carmine. Those are insect shells, right? And those insects did nothing to die for me to give me color, right? Or when if I'm wearing silk sari, 1,000, 15,000 silkworms are boiled alive just for one sari, right? Or if I'm eating a piece of meat, then that animal was somebody's brother or sister. So that is what veganism did. I realized the gravity of the problem. It is not that being vegetarian means that you're off animal products, because tons of vegetarian products are full of animal products. And that's when I realized that we need to make a connection. Now I will be very quick in showing you a slide about veganism. It'll probably clarify a couple of things. See, this is what I mean. I've started to realize is that even the amount of animals that are killed on a daily basis, right? We're killing 70 billion land animals every year for food, whereas we are only some almost 8 billion people now, 7.7 or 8, right? And we are killing 2 billion fish every year. And there are stats which show that by 2050, if we don't stop overfishing, there will be no fish left in the ocean, right? So the gravity of the problem was not just, my ethics or from a compassion point of view. It was also very much related to, can we afford this as a planet? Is it sustainable? It is completely unsustainable. The amount of food grains it takes to feed livestock, so can actually feed 9 families, because the value chain here is that you producing grains, producing soy, corn, wheat, etc., feeding it to first animals, and then you're eating those animals, and you're producing all this water to feed those animals and then eating them, and then the methane gas that is generated from them. So it is one leading to global warming because it increases the level of methane in the planet. And the second thing is it's completely unsustainable, right? It's completely unsustainable. You'd rather just, if you want to get your protein through an animal, the animal is also getting it through the vegetables and the grass. So you'd rather just take it from there, right? And then the other thing which I realized was that um, just the carbon footprint in general, right? So it was unsustainable. Now after that, I also started to realize how unhealthy animal foods is. So a lot of animal products like meat, etc., are full of antibiotics, or they have no prana in them. If you understand Ayurveda or yoga, you start to realize that all living foods which have seen sunlight, are high energy food. Something which is dead flesh will take more energy from your body to digest that, right? So if somebody wants to get healthy, the last thing they want to take the protein from fish and meat, etc., because that has no energy in it. And even meat itself has high cholesterol. So all in all combined, I was convinced that, look, veganism is the way to go. But hey, let's not forget, this was in 2014, when India was at a very different stage with veganism. It was very tough to go vegan in India. Even soya milk was available, maybe like if you look at 2-3 kilometers, or maybe in that city, maybe there's one shop selling soya milk. So even though I was convinced, it was tough to do it. And now I'll tell you what was the transformation, and what I did about that problem, and how my entrepreneurial journey actually started. But if anybody has any questions at this stage, would be happy to answer.
So I'm sure Manita has some questions.
Yes, yes, yes. So let me ask some of the questions, and very relevant to, I think you are about to share that only. My students are asking like, what were the challenges that you have faced during the beginning of your journey, and like how did you overcome those challenges, especially when we are talking about India, in the Indian context. What were the major challenges? And a little personal question also someone has asked, how long did you took to transit from to a vegan lifestyle? So that's a little personal. I'm not very sure if you're comfortable answering that. And yeah, a few more, but I'll ask after that.
Sure, thank you. Well, I'll address the first question first. That the challenges were plenty because I was living on my own. I had a school job to go to, and I was not somebody who had the time to take extra effort to get my plant-based cheese or import my almond milk at the time. But I Googled online where to find local groups, and I quickly got connected to them. And there are two ways to go vegan, right? So if you want to, either you find substitutes. Say I don't take meat, right? Now you find a mock meat, which is a good substitute, or you find you don't like cheese, So you find a plant-based cheese, which is a good substitute, or plant-based milk, like an almond milk or soy milk, etc. Now, what I did was that it was tough to find substitutes. So I went vegan without taking those products, so either you subtract those products or you substitute it. So all I had to do was that, not take my paneer anymore. All I had to do was not take my cheese anymore or my butter. In a way, it was easier because I was staying on my own. So, when you're with your family, it's very difficult because you're tempted and you want to eat it quickly. So in a way, that was easier. But yes, I don't find that question personal at all. I did take my time to go vegan. I took at least couple of years, and it depends. You have to know who you are, what you like, because I realized my hook is chai and coffee. In art school, we were hooked to just sketching and having a cup of chai. So I was hooked to that. And I could not find any plant based milk at that time. Now, of course, there are literally some 10 options in India, right? So now it's luxury for us. But back then, it was very tough. So I switched to green tea, black tea. I kept reminding myself of why I'm doing it. And, I was very motivated to share these videos, but I felt like a hypocrite every time I was sharing it because I realized I'm not practicing it myself. So that was, for me, that was one very big reason to go vegan, because to fully go vegan, because I said I can't share, this is so important. Our planet is at a crisis. We are killing and murdering nonstop, and I need to share this information, but how can I share it if I'm not practicing it, right? So that was my first hook. The second thing is, of course, you reach out to local groups. The community was very helpful. Suddenly started finding out substitutes, and that's when I realized that, hey, you know what? Something happened, and I went on a trip, and I came back from it, and I realized that, okay, I have to do a career shift. And at that time, my school also job got over, and there was this empty space where it was the most beautiful space, because I realized that let's just start a community for vegans in India, which is very authentic, which is a curated list of products or recipes, or even, like, because I realized there's too much information, too many places, and not all of that is totally authentic. And
One
I did not
related question, Palak, one
yes.
related question. Someone has also asked, like, does all the vegan products, food contain all the nutrients which are found in the meat products? I mean, very relevant to right now what you are talking on. So if you can elaborate some nutritional comparison which you have read somewhere, or uh, tell about to our students.
Definitely. So, yes. So before jumping into my entrepreneurial journey, I think I'll just take a few minutes to tell you how to go vegan if anybody wants to go vegan. The way I see it is that, there is no planet B. So we have no choice. At some point or the other, we have to do it, and sooner than later. Secondly, even if somebody, is struggling to do it fully, start with what you have, right? Either substitute it, or, like, for me, I was on tea, coffee for a long time, but everything else I had completely eliminated, and then finally I found a substitute for that also. So, understand, go easy on yourself. uh, Food is very emotional to human beings, so it's not like overnight, you want to just change it. It is difficult, but for me it was just that, my eyes, like I said, my body is not a graveyard, and I had made up my mind, so it just became so easy. So it was also the mindset. Now comes the other part of it, which is nutrients, which is a very important question. What I realized as I started studying and doing my research is that actually plant-based foods have better nutrition than non-vegetarian foods, because they're digestible fast, they're alkaline, and when we're non-vegans, right, we only eat like certain major food groups like paneer ho gaya and one or two more things, and we don't even know how many vegetables actually exist. So when I went vegan, I realized that there's so many vegetables, and so many microgreens, so many other macros that exist, which I don't usually use. So one is that opened up for me. Second is that the amount of protein that you get from a vegan diet is much lesser, 100%, in comparison to a non-vegan diet. But you don't need so much protein. That's the thing. The human body is actually the problem a lot of people are facing today, is because they're taking more protein than their body can digest. That's why we are seeing people having cancer, people having cholesterol issues, things, people having PCOS, or acne, because they can't digest the amount of dairy they're intaking. Look at it, what our grandfathers used to do. They used to have some cheese, or they used to have some milk, which was probably very less, almost medicinal, put once in 1 week of your food. Mostly their diet was plant based. But right now, if you even eat popcorn or makhane, there is cheese in it. There is dairy everywhere. Tell me something, where are the cows? If there is so much dairy, do we see any cows on the streets? No, they're all in slaughterhouses, and they have oxytocin. They inject 5 times an injection called oxytocin in them, so that they can release hormones and they can release milk. And that milk is first giving you toxins more. Nutritionally, everything you get on a non-vegetarian diet, you can get on a plant-based diet, but you need to know what. So your badam, your calcium, your almonds have a great source of calcium, even have protein. Tofu is fantastic. Then you have spinach. All you need to do is understand what is giving you what, and start devising your food. Even if you eat dal, chawal, sabzi, roti, right? You are healthy. First thing you need to do to go vegan is get your vitamin B12 and D3 checked. This is something which most people skip out on. Most of the vitamin B12 that comes from animal products, and people don't take it seriously. A lot of times, even non-vegetarians lack vitamin B12, because see, how do you get vitamin B12? You get it from the microbacterial activity that happens on the grass when a cow is grazing, or when a buffalo or chicken, whatever, is grazing. That directly from the grass, not in a slaughterhouse, but directly from the grass, then it tends to get vitamin B12, which is something which non-vegetarians get. Now, these days, there are not many grass fed slaughterhouse animals anyway. So, even non vegetarians lack vitamin B12. So, for that, you need a supplement. Any chemist, go to any chemist, ask for methylcobalamin, or vitamin B12, and they will give it to you. So, get your levels checked. Whether you're a vegan or a non vegetarian, get your levels checked and take that. So, that is one. Vitamin D, I say, because it's just something which anybody needs to have. We don't take as much as sunlight. So these are the two main things that you need to keep in mind. Apart from that, I think if you eat overall a balanced diet, if you're eating dals, if you're working out, then you're fine. You're fine with going just with dal, roti, sabzi. Just don't overload on carbs. Just don't have too much oils, because when cheese and butter goes away, you tend to put oils for everything. I did that in the beginning. Instead, there are now so many substitutes. There's cashew paste, whole foods available. Then the third thing you want to keep in mind is, remember the diet you used to have before going vegan, right? So if you are somebody who used to take a lot of dahi, a lot of curd, a lot of yogurts, right, and a lot of fermented stuff, now try to find a substitute for that. Now, what I can do is I find dosa, kombucha, all these fermented foods, they are very helpful because they give you good gut bacteria. So these are the few things you can keep in mind. But if you want to build muscle on a vegan diet, if you want to lose weight, it will be easier. But if you want to build muscle, you can easily take a plant-based protein. There's so many protein powders available, and that will also not cause you bloating. So overall, even if you get a good nutritionist to plan your diet, it should be good enough. However, unfortunately, and that's the problem we are trying to tackle now, what we realize is that there is a big disconnect with the medical field and the nutritional field. A lot of doctors, not just in India but globally, are not into health and wellness and nutrition. They care more about not even curing the disease, but just stopping the symptom, right? So here is where I request that everybody does their own research. You will find tons and tons of and if at all you feel any problem, come to us, come to veganfirst.com. We have plant-based nutritionists who are globally certified, who have healed lakhs of people globally. People have reversed their cancers, reversed thyroids, reversed diabetes through plant-based nutrition. So you can always come to us, and we'll help you with a personalized plan. However, if you just do your research online, you should be good also. Ma'am, does that? I hope that sufficiently.
Yes.
I'm
No,
not
Palak,
over.
No, nothing. It was really like it was even enlightening for us what to say about students. Even I did not know all this about vegan food. But we have a few questions waiting for you. So I think we should take them first. So one of our faculty colleagues, Dr. Nitima Agarwal, is also here to ask something. Nitima, ma'am?
Yeah. Hi, Palak. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good, ma'am.
So,
Thanks for
Palak, first of all, congratulations and welcome again to Amity School of Business. Palak, one of my students has just WhatsApped me with a question, Chandan Mittal. So, he wants to ask, what challenges do you face during COVID? During your COVID, he has mentioned the word during your COVID.
Okay, well, I don't think I got COVID yet, touch wood. but what I realized that during COVID, a lot of people actually went vegan. The traffic on our website became 5x more, and every second person was messaging us asking for a vegan, saying that they're going vegan. So I did realize that plant-based diet help people because it's lighter to digest and it has low cholesterol levels. And if you plan it well, like I'll tell you the mistake I made, right? In the beginning, I was eating carbs because I said, hey, I'm going vegan for animals. I don't care about health. I'm not one of those health vegans. I'm going to eat my French fries, right? But age doesn't reverse. So, one has to be mindful of that. So later on, I started now taking in a lot of beans and, I love fruits. I start my day with a green smoothie so many times, or I'll just take, if I'm working out, I'll take a plant protein powder. So overall, I think a vegan diet should, help you get better. Listen, if you have any particular condition, like if somebody has a liver problem or if somebody already has a pre-existing condition, then please first consult your doctor or a physician, because I am not one. I'm just giving very general guidelines. So first talk to them, and then you can discuss. And anytime you want a personalized vegan nutritionist, you can just email us at hello@veganfirst.com, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with someone or something like that.
Okay, so that was the question from the side of the student. Now, question from my side. So, you have angel investors or you have venture capitalists also?
Well, so now I'll tell you how we started, and we have been approached by a lot of angel investors and venture capitalists. But because the market wasn't ready in India, we took our own sweet time to bootstrap, and we're finally now getting funded. But we've taken our own time to really develop a proof of concept. So, if you don't mind, I'll jump on to the next phase, which is what does Vegan First do, and how did we start the journey? Okay. So
Yes.
somebody is
Okay.
asking.
Aditya Gupta. Aditya Gupta. Yes, Aditya.
Ma'am, I have some things to put forward if you don't mind.
Please.
So, yeah, ma'am, so I absolutely respect and I understand what you said right now about dairy and how there's massive use of oxytocin in order to like get the cows to milk, and how the child is separated from the mother, and in fact the child is not even fed, like if it's a female calf, for example, that's beneficial to dairies. Like they're going to keep them and they don't even like feed them the mother's milk. They have milk supplements like milk powder, and they like mix it with water and they give them that milk. However, so if somebody properly like understands Ayurveda and like what our books like like our Vedas and everything say, then the cow is considered to be our mother, right? So the thing is that since the Western culture settled in, everybody wanted to go for convenience. Everybody wants things to be faster, more in output, and cheaper in cost. So that is why so this is all the things that you have said, ma'am, are like applied to like Jersey cows, which is the cattle of the Western culture. However, in India, once upon a time in India, there were only indigenous cow breeds. Now we have 5 indigenous cow breeds. So this is what the entire talk about A1 and A2 is. In fact, the cows of Jersey milk that which is why people are going vegan these days, that milk is the reason why lactose intolerance started in the first place. It has
Correct.
become a reason for schizophrenia, it has become a reason for autism, breast cancer related issues, early puberty in women, and type 1 diabetes, and so many things. That is why doctors ask you to not have milk today. However, I've not seen any doctor who tells you that it is safe for you to have milk of indigenous cow breeds. So now, according to our Vedas, ma'am, a house which we are all India is an agricultural land. Like we are all like cattle people and farmers. So it was understood, like it was considered that a house which had a who had a cow, the indigenous cow breed, a cow. Uh, I mean, a house can like be self-sufficient just because of that cow. Like, that cow is going to like help you run your entire house, and like you will not be needing anything. Like in Indian families, it's very like hard to like leave milk. Your butter, your ghee, your dahi, your paneer, your milk, everything comes from the cow. So now the thing is that this is what the entire talk about A1 and A2 is. So what A2 milk is of indigenous cow breeds, and in fact, so the milk of this cow. So in Hindi, in Sanskrit, the term to like take out milk of the cow in Sanskrit is called dohan. Dohan means dohna, which means like a cow has four. Okay, in a cow's udder there are four teats. Okay, and what it means is that allow me to talk in Hindi because I'll be able to explain better in Hindi. So जब आप दूध निकालते हो, so you only milk like two of the cow's teats, and two of the cow's teats are meant for the calf. So
Correct.
so while
I'm
the cow
aware
is
of this. Yeah.
yeah,
So
so
your
while the
question
cow is
exactly is,
no, so I'm just trying to say that if like so what A2 milk is basically it's like it's absolute it has cholesterol which is found in a human mother's milk. So the thing about indigestion of the milk in human bodies is absolutely right, but that applies to the Western cattle. If you ever consume milk which is of our indigenous cow breeds, that milk is meant for us. So like the two of the teats are meant for the calf, and that is sufficient for the calf. In fact, an indigenous cow breed would not even give you milk if the cow doesn't have the milk first.
yeah.
But that
So
is possible in like the
Okay,
Western cows because they would give you milk.
I agree.
Aditya,
So
that was a
firstly,
very good piece of information. Just listen to what Palak has to say now.
yeah. No, Aditya, thank you. That was very enlightening, and I'm sure it was very, very useful for everyone also. And actually, I agree with
Yes.
you. So there are two things here, right? One is that, see, we have indigenous cows, which is totally true. But today, if you look at bigger factories which are producing milk in India, right? None of us are living in villages. We don't have a concept, unfortunately, like Krishna used to have in those days, where the calf gets fed first and there's just this much milk remaining which the family can take, and for medicinal purposes. I actually agree with the fact that milk was used as a medicinal for medicinal purposes, and it is said to have good properties back in the day. Can we do it now? I'm not so sure. That is just one. However, even if, for instance, even if A2 milk is okay for you, there are not places in India wherein people are producing A2 milk unless it's a rarity. Especially in a city like Delhi or Bombay, every second place is not. Maybe there is a farmhouse somewhere which is producing it. That is one. Secondly, and if taken by ethical means, and where the calf gets the milk, etc., then if somebody wants to take it, it's up to them. The way I see it is that, because this is the very first thing that was even told to me when I went vegan, right? Why don't you just take milk from a happy cow instead, right? So firstly, what I realized is that, when I realized that the animal is not a commodity, right? When your thinking changes, then I didn't feel I needed to take milk anymore anyway, right? Because I understood nutritionally I'm getting everything from plants, so I don't really need it. That was one. Secondly, yes, there are people I know who have their own cows. They take care of them like a family, and they first feed all the calves, and if at all there is some excess milk left, then they consume it. So okay, great. I have a lot of respect for those people because they're taking care of calves also. But mostly, unfortunately, most of the people, even your normal chocolate that we're consuming, or a milkshake that we're taking, all that milk is pure hormones. Nowhere is, and we don't even know if those cows which are mass produced are indigenous or not. And then there is another point, which is ethical. And people say that it is very unsustainable to have cows and keep cows. If you don't take milk, then why should we have cows, right? then it's a waste of money, and you get no ROI. Even a farmer doesn't, right? So what I realize is that I've seen this beautiful format. There is this again, I'm just talking from an ethics point of view, because I think health wise people would also want to then take keto, or people would also want to say, hey, this diet is better than that diet. But I think the whole point about realizing that we don't have a planet B is understanding that we're ripping away everything that exists around us. So there is this beautiful farm in Noida. I'm forgetting the name. It started by Arpana. I'll just tell you this name. And they actually have cows where they don't milk them, but they give a source of revenue, because the poop from the cow dung, and gahumutra, and cow dung and cow urine. So they actually make paper out of it. So it's a very sustainable way of still using animal products and animal byproducts, which can reduce the carbon footprint. And at the same time, the cow is feeding their baby or not. If somebody has a cow at their home and, having A2 milk, after giving it to the calves, that's something which, I don't think I have the place to stay over there. It's a personal choice, but I personally won't take it because I just didn't feel the need to. And I hope that answered your question. And thank you for sharing your viewpoint, because I totally respect that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You're absolutely right, ma'am. It's like about how commercial dairies are, and they all want to go for that cattle because they give 50 liters of milk, and our cows give like 10 liters of milk. So it's more profitable, and everybody goes for that once they exceed a scale. If they're small scale, then they can maintain that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Aditya.
Okay. That was very good, Aditya. So, Palak, you like to proceed, or should we take a few more questions?
I think that we might run out of time, so I'll just go to the next part because it's already 5:15. So, in the
Yes.
all right. So then I think, at the end of the session, I'll definitely take up more questions about veganism, and you can always write to us. A lot of people say that, hey, even plants have feelings. These are one of the common questions we get. But plants, unfortunately, don't have a nervous system, so they can't feel. And it's also about, if you're consuming something, hey, what is lesser of the two evils, right? So this is something which I want to just address before I move forward. When a fruit or a vegetable drops off from a tree, it is like chipping off a nail. It doesn't really hurt the plant. But when you're chopping off a head of a lamb, it is killing a life itself, right? So if we are sensitive to these things, we'll be able to understand that fruits are meant for procreation, because it carries the seed, it will fall into the ground and more plants will come out, right? But if you have more questions about it, always happy to answer. So coming to the entrepreneurial journey, next part of my talk is that when I see a problem at an early stage, and mind you, I have no godfather or anybody who is just saying, hey, take this much seed investment and start a business, right? But when I see the problem at an early stage, which is based on ethics, which is not looking profitable to rest of the world, how do you make a difference and change it and still be able to sustain yourself when you know it's the right thing to do, right? So the problem was that, hey, there is a lot of animal agriculture happening. It is seen as an animal rights movement. It is not even seen as a business. So if I start talking about it, automatically somebody will say start an NGO, right? Second thing is that if it is a business, then does the market exist? Can you make a business model out of it? Globally also, at the time I'm talking about 2016, veganism was not taken in a very, very big light. People were used to make fun of vegans. It's only since the last 2-3 years that the equation has changed. So, my suggestion is always that if you know your why, if you know why you're doing something, everything falls into place. Your business plan, your investors, your, proof of concept. If you know why you are doing and you have crystal clear clarity, that itself will take you, because we have seen a lot of things. We have seen demonetization, we have seen Facebook algorithm changing, we have seen COVID twice, so how do you sustain a business through all of that? Most people I've seen, just give up sometimes, or say, like, let's just do that, aajkal content chal raha hai, ye karte hain, or here is where the money is, let's do that, right? But how do you persevere when you have a vision and there is no support? Now this is where I've always told any entrepreneur, be it any difference you want to make. Say you want to improve the education system, right? Or say you want to make better tires for cars or start electric cars. You could want to do anything, right? You have to first be very, very convinced about why you're doing it. And for that, you need to first know who you are. You know, if you don't know your own values, your own ethics, then it is difficult for you to get your why in the first place. And that was when I said that, hey, I was never motivated, I was never a go-getter. But the moment I understand, my purpose, I was like on fire. And I do not know how I became so shameless, in front of everyone going, because I realized this is not about me. This is not about me, it is about a larger cause. And if I don't do it, who will? So I think that kind of conviction, if everybody in the world could have about whatever profession they choose, right? You want to be an interior designer, you want to be a sustainability enthusiast, whoever you want to do, it will take you far and long, because the journey is very long. It is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And there are a lot of bumps on the road. And these are some basics, which fundamentals of any entrepreneurial journey, which keep you going. So that is one thing. And I started by just blogging in a room. I started sitting alone in a bedroom, just blogging and content going viral. And mind you, at that time, we did not have blogs. Online blogs were not popular. They were just starting. They were not taken seriously, because print magazines were more of, a royalty thing, and they were they were giving better preferences. So digital was not taken seriously as a business model in itself. But let's face the facts. I had to start from where I was, right? So I had nothing else at the time to start. And I was teaching in a school. I had just stopped my job there. This is all I had. And I did not have any investors. But I knew that there was a vision. And I knew if the market doesn't exist, we'll create the market, because it's the right thing to do. There was no question about what is happening in the West, how many years it will take. So when I started doing that, luckily I found a person, an investor who's, a family friend only. And they, again, at a very angel round, I would not even call it a seed money or anything, sort of said, hey, this is interesting, this is fresh, and we'll help you out. After we showed some proof of concept, after some content started going viral, and people really started noticing us. And this is what I thought. I looked at my own strengths. I said, look, I'm good at marketing, I'm good at arts, I'm good at visuals, and I'm good at conveying what is in my heart, right? Through audiovisual. So I did that. But if I was good at finance, maybe I would have done, created a different business model. So one thing that really helped me was identifying my own strengths. Anyway, it was tough to create a market at an early stage, but I don't want to make it tougher by doing something which I'm not good at in the first place. So that was one. The other thing, what I decided to do was find out, how do I go to market early? They say that first time founders figure out the product, second time founders figure out the distribution. So I think my full focus was get the distribution in order, so that it's not like we just spend a lot of time in just creating stuff. How do we actually get the reach? Because I started a publication. Now it was tough to get ad units, advertisers in the beginning, or monetize ourselves. But that's when people started recognizing our work, and they themselves just came to us. In the beginning, we thought, let's just do good work, and let's go ahead with it. It's not like I didn't try to make a business model. But see, when there is no market that exists for something, how do you make a business model around it, right? That was a different journey altogether. It is only now that we're making business models, because we are actually creating the stats of how many vegans are there. And today, what started out by just writing an article or two, has become a company, and we're now going global, and we're now doing conferences in India, and also expanding internationally. This is what we do. I'll just share a slide very quickly. So we have a flagship event, a conference which we do, year on year. We are in print. When we started out 1 year into print, an international magazine called us and said, we love what you do. We want to have a joint venture and we want to launch a print magazine. Then the third year, somebody contacted us and said, you know what, let's just start a whole conference altogether. And we were shocked to see that in 2019, there were delegates who came in from more than 18 countries, where we did not even know if veganism in India existed at the time. So be it people from Indonesia, US, Hong Kong, we just kept doing what we do, and there were people from everywhere in the world who came in, and suddenly the gateway, to India for trade between vegan companies opened up, between knowledge exchange, food technologists came in, exporters came in, and we saw a huge influx, and we thought, hey, you know what? Let's just build this whole ecosystem, right? So this is something which we wanted to do. It was not just that let's just give us information, because I can give all the gyan, but if somebody does not find a decent plant-based cheese, to eat at the end of the day, then they're not turning vegan, or maybe they find it tougher. So we looked at building B2B solutions, and as well as creating awareness. So for us, it was always awareness and alternatives and support, all of them that went hand in hand. And we kept doing that for a while. And our aim was also, to do whatever it takes. So when I say do whatever it takes, is that, say we had to talk to celebrities, or we had to make veganism mainstream. So we did that. So we found out, literally the who is who, and started creating that content. Today, we reach out to a lot of people in, say, Bollywood. We saw Moby and Bryan Adams giving us interviews on why they went vegan. And again, this is a bootstrap company, not funded, started by a single founder, female, a little ahead of its time, and I don't take credit for it as much. Why? Because how many people came to help us out was something which I don't feel I did this. I feel it was a movement. The time for it is right. But yes, your personal conviction about something really helps. So if you see today, we reach out to lakhs of people. We distribute our content in 13 channels, and we reach out to more than 21 countries now. And it's been a crazy journey. And now finally, we're looking at raising our first round and expanding. And we had to go through the tests and the patience. And guys, at any time when I was stuck, my only question to myself was, why am I doing this in the first place? Because I was getting a lot of other job offers in the beginning from other places who were paying me 5 times more. As an entrepreneur, you need to understand that you're investing your own, in the beginning. So but it's not. Now I don't think you even need to bootstrap a vegan company. Now it's so easy to get funded, and we, by the grace of God, and I think my guru, we have the luxury to choose which investors we want, because there's so many people who want to invest, But we still had to go through the days where, we did not know if it will work, it will not work. And that's when I heard Mark Zuckerberg say it somewhere, every year in the beginning, every year Facebook's fate was questioned. In the first few years, every year they said, should we do it for one more year, or should we just shut down? Can we pull it out? Can you pull up? Can we make it? So sometimes it's truly resilience, that counts. And that is the time which comes from, knowing your own purpose. That is more important. And you have to be smart and quick enough to change your strategy when you feel that you need to. Like, for example, we built a whole business on Facebook. We were very, very viral. We were getting a lot of business from there in the first 2 years. Suddenly, Facebook changes the algorithm. We had to be quick to change, very quick. It was overnight. We had to pivot, and we had to see the opportunity and go after it. So it's not that you have to be so rigid also that, oh, it's my vision, and I'm only going to do it in this way. If you if you look at the larger purpose, automatically flexibility will come. So I think that is also important. Do we have any questions?
Palak, it was an excellent discourse on vegan food. In fact, I even never thought about all that. So I have two questions for you. They are from my side. But before that, I'll ask one student's question. You can be very short about it, right? She's just asking that, is being vegan a bit expensive today?
It can be expensive only if you rely on 100% alternatives. But if you make your own cashew cheese, if you make your own cashew milk, it's very easy. And you can manage your expenses because a lot of times you're also letting go of a lot of non-vegan foods, right? So if you're careful about it, it won't be expensive.
Okay, okay. Ruchi ma'am, do you have any questions?
I think, Palak, it's also about, if we have a growing demand for vegan food, I'm sure there'll be more alternative suppliers coming up, and then, the market will balance out the price that you today find to be very high. So the same thing which is going on in case of organic foods, if there are more takers for organic foods, I'm sure the price will balance out in due course of time. So,
Yeah,
Yes,
as ma'am
absolutely.
said, it's a supply and demand thing.
yeah.
Completely correct.
So, Palak, I have one last question, which has been coming to my mind. You know, we often hear, just one second, एक second.
So, Palak, like when I was listening to you, I was
Okay,
just
I'm
thinking
so
in my
sorry.
mind. So, Ruchika, I was just saying that,
Ah,
the opportunity that she picked up was, maybe just a bleak spot. And because it was her in a call, she took on to it. And then she created an entire team of people. And because she was so passionate about it, she could really put all those efforts. So, whether you have to turn vegan or not, I'm sure that is a personal choice for people. And maybe Palak, being a vegan first CEO, would like more and more people to turn vegan. But I'm not saying that through this platform we are trying to say anything like that. However, yes, like she said, I remember that one instance that she was talking about, that when I was a kid, I never questioned what I was eating. I was just eating whatever was served to me. So, yes, as a person, we should at least exercise our choice. Whether it is vegan food or it is non-vegan food, we should at least have our options after we know exactly what we are eating. So that's the only thing I would like to say to the
and
students.
yes, absolutely, Ruchi ma'am, and I would like to take your thing forward, that she picked up that idea and she converted into a business idea. So everything can be converted into a business idea. We just need to be passionate about it. So, Palak, I have just one question. You know, we often hear that, see, with no offenses to anybody, but we often hear that if we eat a lot of non-vegetarian food, our thought process becomes like that. You know, we become a little more aggressive
Yeah.
and something like that. And if we are vegetarian, the thought process changes. So I would just request you to tell us something, because, you know, you were an avid chicken eater and everything, and then you converted into vegan.
So, that is absolutely true. People say there is, our ancient culture says sattva, rajas, and tamas, right? So,
Ha
tamas
ha
is the
ha.
lowest, where you're lazy, you're eating dead meat or processed food. Rajas is like coffee and action oriented, and sattva is just higher thoughts and, things which give you prana and higher energy. I think that's absolutely true. It's very difficult to measure it for a regular person because it's very subtle. But I have realized that one, I just am, how do I say, more positive. And secondly, I think that, once you go vegan, there's life before going vegan and there's life after going vegan, because your whole world changes, right? Suddenly you realize that, you can, and this could happen with anything, but especially when it comes to food, right? Because you're taking it every day. You realize that you're feeling better and you are conscious. So I think there's a shift in your consciousness, like Ruchi ma'am just said, right? So first be aware of what you're doing and do from there, whatever activity is. And veganism is just one of them. Even like, consuming like cutlery, for example, or the way we travel. We are in 2021 where we don't have an option not to be conscious as a society, because already so much damage has been done in any field, be it even transport. So I think veganism definitely helps you in that. And if anybody wants to try, why don't they just try it for say 21 days or 2 months? See the difference in your body. I think your own experience you should trust more than what a third person says. So feel it yourself, and don't be afraid to take the right help. Don't feel like, hey, I went vegan, I started feeling weak, what do I do? Talk to nutritionists, because anything you do, any detox you do, first there will be a period where you will go through a detox. We have taken in so much toxins all our life. Don't give up there. Understand it and go all the way, and then you will actually be feeling a lot of superior health and just happiness overall, I guess.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think Ruchi ma'am, we had a very healthy discussion today on vegan food.
Yes,
So if
and it was, Palak, it was like Ruchika ma'am said, it was so much of information even for us. I mean, so many things that you had talked about, we never got to know. And through you, we also got to know how much Aditya knows. I mean, I'm sure Aditya has never shared anything of this sort with us in the class. But I mean, because he got a platform where he could share the related knowledge. So thank you, Aditya. I mean, whatever you had shared, that also was something really, informational for all of us. So it was so good, Palak, to have you. And, as you were speaking, there was this particular poetry that was coming in my mind. I'm fond of poetry, Palak. So, I just keep reading here and there. So you must have heard of this particular poet. He's a very famous poet, Majrooh Sultanpuri. And he writes also, he's written very famous songs. So he said something like this, मैं अकेला ही चला था मगर मैं अकेला ही चला था नो सॉरी मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता गया. So like you said, no, that I started as a blogger and then I got somebody in my family and then we got more people from abroad wanted to connect with us. So I think that's how this vegan movement has picked up. And I'm sure, Palak, after this session today, you will have more number of followers from Amity because I'm sure you have touched a chord somewhere with some of us. So there'll be more people thinking about it more seriously. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing about your life journey, Palak. It was absolutely inspirational. And thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. If you don't mind, I'll just present the website address so that everybody can see.
Sure, no problems. Yes.
Vegan first, yes.
Yeah, is it showing or should I stop?
Yes.
No, it's showing.
It's showing.
Okay, so anybody wants to know any information, please follow us on social media or write to us on the email address or subscribe to our newsletter. And I wish all of you good health and happiness in whatever you do. And once again, thank you so much, Ruchi ma'am and Ruchika ma'am, for inviting me. I think this was a lovely session, and I'm so glad that students did not sleep. I hope.
No. I'm saying the pleasure is all ours, and the kind of action we saw in the session, I don't think any of them were sleeping.
Yes, absolutely. And beyond 5:30 also we have more than 135 students still. That's one of the biggest achievement.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Palak.
Thank you so much, Palak.
Yeah, and for Amity, for being, I'm really lucky I was a part of Amity and I had such mentors like you. So thanks, a lot of credit goes to you.
So Palak, we'd like to invite you more often as long as this virtual platform is there and once it's done on the physical platform also. So we'd like to see you more often.
My pleasure, ma'am. I'll be honored to. Thank you.
Thank you, Palak.
Thank you, Palak.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.